Her hand froze on the wine bottle when she felt his gaze burning into her. It was him, the stranger from the park, the man whose kiss she couldn't forget, the one who had vanished as quickly as he appeared, leaving an imprint on her lips and a lingering question in her heart. He sat at the VIP table, an aura of quiet power surrounding him, his eyes, dark and intense, fixed solely on her. A shiver ran down her spine, a mix of fear and an undeniable, thrilling recognition. He didn't know who she really was, a psychology student on the verge of dropping out, a waitress barely making ends meet. Or did he? Sophia traced the worn edges of her textbook, the words blurring before her eyes. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park bench, but its warmth did little to thaw the chill of anxiety that had settled deep in her bones. Los Angeles, with its endless sprawl and glittering promises, felt more like a gilded cage than a land of opportunity. Every month the tuition bill for her psychology degree loomed larger, a monstrous shadow threatening to swallow her whole. She was good at it, brilliant even, her professors often remarked on her insightful contributions. But brilliance didn't pay the rent or buy groceries, and it certainly didn't cover the ever-increasing cost of higher education. The decision, though agonizing, was becoming inevitable. She had to drop out. A sigh escaped her lips, heavy with the weight of deferred dreams. She imagined telling her advisor, the quiet shame of admitting defeat. Her parents, long gone, had always instilled in her the value of education, a path to a better life. Now, that path was crumbling beneath her feet. She closed the textbook, the faint scent of old paper, a bittersweet reminder of a future she might never grasp. The park, usually a sanctuary of green amidst the urban concrete, felt suffocating. She needed to walk, to clear her head, to somehow outrun the despair nipping at her heels. She rose, her movements slow and deliberate, her mind still replaying the grim calculations of her bank account. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful, indifferent backdrop to her internal turmoil. She crossed a quiet street, her thoughts miles away, lost in the labyrinth of her financial woes. A sudden, piercing screech of tires ripped through the evening air, jolting her back to reality. Her head snapped up, her eyes widening in terror as a sleek black SUV swerved violently, its massive frame bearing down on her. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity. She froze, a deer caught in headlights, her heart hammering against her ribs. The SUV screeched to a halt mere inches from her, the force of its braking throwing her off balance. She stumbled backward, her legs weak, her breath catching in her throat. The driver's side window, tinted black, glided down silently, revealing a man who seemed to have stepped out of a magazine. He was devastatingly handsome, with sharp, chiseled features, dark, intense eyes, and a perfectly tailored suit that spoke of unimaginable wealth. His presence was commanding, almost intimidating, yet there was a flicker of concern in his gaze as he looked at her. "Are you all right?" His voice was deep, resonant, a low rumble that sent an unexpected shiver through her. Sophia could only nod, still trembling, her voice caught somewhere in her throat. She felt a blush creep up her neck, embarrassed by her near accident and the sudden intense scrutiny of this powerful stranger. He was everything she wasn't, polished, affluent, utterly in control. She, on the other hand, was a mess of frayed nerves and financial worries, her worn jeans and simple t-shirt a stark contrast to his impeccable attire. He stepped out of the car, his movements fluid and confident. He was taller than she expected, his broad shoulders filling the space around him. He didn't approach too closely, maintaining a respectful distance, but his eyes never left hers. "You seem distracted," he observed, his tone not accusatory, but genuinely curious. I was," she admitted, finally finding her voice, though it was still a little shaky. "Lost in thought, my fault entirely." He studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering on her face, then her simple clothes. She felt a strange mix of discomfort and an odd sense of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in a long while. "It's getting dark," he said, glancing at the rapidly fading light. "Can I offer you a ride home?" Sophia's immediate instinct was to refuse. She never accepted rides from strangers, especially not from men who looked like they owned half of Los Angeles. "No, thank you," she said, trying to sound firm, despite the tremor in her voice. "I'm fine, I can walk." He raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "It's quite a walk from here, and not the safest area after dark. Besides, he added, his eyes twinkling slightly, I almost ran you over. Consider it an apology. His persistence was disarming. She hesitated, glancing around. The park was indeed emptying, and the streetlights were beginning to flicker on, casting long, eerie shadows. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, making the thought of a long walk home unbearable. Her pride warred with her practicality. The practicality won. All right, she conceded, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you. He opened the passenger door for her, a gesture of old-world chivalry that surprised her. The interior of the SUV was plush, luxurious, smelling faintly of leather and something expensive she couldn't quite place. She sank into the soft seat, feeling utterly out of place. As he got back into the driver's seat, the silence stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with an unspoken tension. He started the engine, a low purr, and pulled away smoothly. Where to? He asked, his eyes briefly meeting hers in the rearview mirror. Just a few blocks down near the old library, she replied, giving him a general direction. She still felt a pang of unease, but his calm demeanor was strangely reassuring. And what do you do, Sophia? He asked, his voice casual, as if making polite conversation. He had remembered her name from her brief introduction. You seem like a woman with a lot on her mind. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She had only given him her first name. The question, though innocent, felt like a probe. She wasn't ready to reveal the messy reality of her life to this man, this enigma of power and wealth. She looked out the window, watching the city lights blur past. I'm a student, she finally said, omitting the part about dropping out. And I work. She left it vague, hoping he wouldn't press further. The thought of telling him she was a waitress, struggling to pay for her education, felt like admitting defeat all over again. He didn't press, but she felt his gaze on her for a moment longer before he returned his attention to the road. The silence returned, but this time it was filled with a growing curiosity about him and a strange, undeniable pull. She wondered who he was, what he did, and why a man like him was driving through a park at dusk. The questions swirled in her mind, a welcome distraction from her own troubles. She glanced at him, his profile illuminated by the passing streetlights, and felt a peculiar sense of destiny, as if this near accident was anything but. Sophia clutched her worn backpack, the strap digging into her shoulder as the luxurious SUV glided through the Los Angeles streets. Thorny, as he had introduced himself, drove with an easy confidence, one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, the other occasionally tapping a rhythm on the console. The air inside the car was cool, a stark contrast to the humid evening outside, and the faint scent of his expensive cologne filled the space, intoxicating and unfamiliar. Just a student and you work, Thorny repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice. That's a rather broad description, Sophia. What are you studying and where do you work? Sophia felt a familiar prickle of defensiveness. She wasn't ashamed of her life, but she wasn't eager to lay bare her struggles to a man who clearly lived in a different stratosphere. Psychology, she answered, her voice firm. And my job is just a job. Nothing exciting. She deliberately kept her tone neutral, hoping to discourage further inquiry. She didn't know this man, and despite his polite demeanor, there was an intensity about him that made her wary. He chuckled softly, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the car. I doubt anything you do is nothing exciting, Sophia. You have a fire in your eyes even when you're trying to hide it. He glanced at her, his dark eyes piercing, as if he could see right through her carefully constructed facade. Psychology, though, that's fascinating. What draws you to it? His genuine interest, rather than simple curiosity, caught her off guard. She found herself relaxing slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing. I've always been fascinated by the human mind, she began, her voice softening as she spoke about her passion. Understanding why people do what they do, the complexities of emotions, the way our experiences shape us. It's like solving a puzzle. I want to help people navigate their own minds, find peace. Thorny listened intently, his gaze occasionally flicking to her, a thoughtful expression on his face. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. He simply absorbed her words, and that, in itself, was a rare and comforting experience. A noble pursuit, he finally said, a genuine admiration in his tone. It takes a certain kind of strength to delve into the minds of others, and even more to want to heal them. It takes strength to survive in this city too, Sophia retorted, a wry smile touching her lips. "Especially when you're trying to do it on your own terms." He met her gaze, a knowing look in his eyes. "I understand that more than you know, Sophia. Life isn't always fair, but it's how you fight back that defines you." His words resonated with her, a shared understanding that transcended their vastly different worlds. She saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a depth she hadn't expected, a hint of battles fought and won. They continued to talk, the conversation flowing easily, surprisingly. She found herself telling him about her dreams, her aspirations, the quiet determination that fueled her despite the odds. She didn't mention the impending dropout, but she spoke of the financial pressures, the constant struggle to balance work and studies. He in turn spoke vaguely of his work, of managing complex situations and making difficult decisions, his words carefully chosen, revealing little but hinting at immense responsibility. Yet through it all, he maintained an air of quiet power, an unspoken authority that was both alluring and slightly unnerving. As they approached her modest apartment building, a sense of melancholy settled over Sophia. The ride, though short, had been a welcome escape from her worries, a brief foray into a world she rarely glimpsed. She pointed to her building, a nondescript structure nestled among similar ones. Thorny pulled up to the curb, the powerful engine falling silent. "Thank you for the ride, Thorny," she said, her voice tinged with genuine gratitude. "And for not running me over." A small, shy smile played on her lips. He turned to face her fully, his arm resting on the back of her seat, his proximity suddenly overwhelming. The scent of his cologne was stronger now, wrapping around her, making her heart beat a little faster. His eyes, dark and intense, searched hers, a silent question in their depths. "It was my pleasure, Sophia," he murmured, his voice lower now, softer. "I'm glad I found you." The air crackled between them, thick with unspoken emotions. She felt a magnetic pull, an undeniable chemistry that defied logic and circumstance. Her gaze dropped to his lips, full and inviting, and a warmth spread through her veins. She knew she should get out, thank him again, and disappear back into her ordinary life, but her feet felt rooted to the spot, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting desires. He leaned in slowly, his eyes still locked on hers, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but she didn't. She couldn't. Her breath hitched in her throat as his lips, soft yet firm, met hers. It was a gentle kiss at first, tentative, a question rather than a demand, but as their lips molded together, a spark ignited, a fire that had been smoldering beneath the surface. Her hands, trembling slightly, instinctively reached up, one resting on his strong jawline, the other clutching the lapel of his expensive suit. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more passionate, a silent conversation of longing and unexpected connection. It was a kiss that promised danger, whispered secrets, and ignited a desire she hadn't known she possessed. It was a kiss that changed everything. The kiss was a supernova, exploding in Sophia's senses, eclipsing the world around them. His lips were firm, warm, tasting faintly of mint and something uniquely him. Her fingers, tangled in the soft stubble of his jaw, felt the tremor that ran through him, mirroring her own. It wasn't just a physical sensation. It was an emotional earthquake, shaking the foundations of her carefully constructed ordinary life. Every worry, every financial burden, every fear of the future vanished in the intensity of that moment. There was only Thorny, his scent, his touch, the undeniable heat that flared between them. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were heavy-lidded, dark with a raw emotion that both thrilled and terrified her. His thumb gently stroked her cheek, a feather-light touch that left a trail of fire. "Sophia," he breathed, his voice husky, a low murmur that sent shivers down her spine. I didn't expect that." She couldn't speak, her breath still ragged, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Her cheeks burned, a blush spreading across her face. She felt a dizzying mix of exhilaration and profound embarrassment. What had she done? Kissing a stranger, a man of such power and mystery, right outside her humble apartment. It was reckless, impulsive, utterly unlike her. He leaned in again, his lips brushing against her ear. "When can I see you again?" he whispered, his voice a seductive promise. "I need to see you again." The question jolted her back to reality, the harsh truth of her situation crashing down. She was a struggling student, a waitress, barely surviving. He was, whatever he was, a man of immense wealth and influence, a world away from her. This, whatever this was, couldn't happen. It was a fleeting moment, a beautiful, dangerous anomaly. I can't, she stammered, pulling away abruptly, her hands dropping from his face as if burned. The sudden movement created a chasm between them, both physical and emotional. I have to go. She fumbled for the door handle, her fingers clumsy, her mind racing. She needed to escape, to put distance between herself and this intoxicating, terrifying man. She couldn't give him her number, couldn't invite him into the chaos of her life. It was too much, too soon, too dangerous. "Sophia, wait," he called out, his voice laced with a frustration she hadn't heard before. But she didn't. She yanked the door open, practically tumbling out of the SUV. Without a backward glance, she fled, her heart still hammering, her cheeks burning, the memory of his kiss a searing brand on her lips. She didn't stop until she was inside her apartment, the door locked and bolted, leaning against it, gasping for breath. Her body still thrummed with the aftershocks of their encounter, a potent mix of fear and exhilarating desire. Thonny watched her go, a storm brewing in his dark eyes. He sat there for a long moment, the scent of her still lingering in the luxurious interior of his car, the taste of her lips a phantom on his own. He had never been refused, never been left so abruptly, so completely bewildered. He was a man who commanded respect, who got what he wanted. Yet this humble, determined woman had walked away from him, leaving him with nothing but questions and an insatiable craving. Days turned into a week, then two. Thonny found himself unusually distracted. Meetings felt tedious, decisions felt less sharp. His mind kept replaying the image of Sophia, her intelligent eyes, her shy smile, the fire he'd seen beneath her vulnerability. He remembered her passion for psychology, her quiet strength, her fierce independence. He remembered the way her hands had felt on his face, the way her lips had responded to his. The casual kiss had become an obsession, a relentless whisper in his mind. His closest men, accustomed to his laser focus, noticed the change. He was more pensive, often lost in thought, his usual intensity replaced by a restless energy. He barked orders less, stared out windows more. He had tried to find her, of course. He had driven past her apartment building several times, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. He had even sent a few discreet inquiries, but Sophia, it seemed, was a ghost. She had given him no last name, no contact information, no hint of where she worked. It was as if she had materialized out of thin air, kissed him, and then dissolved back into the anonymity of the city. The frustration gnawed at him. He was Thonny, a man who could find anyone, anywhere. Yet this one woman, this psychology student with a fire in her eyes, had eluded him. He found himself thinking about her at odd hours, wondering if she thought of him, if the kiss had affected her as profoundly as it had him. He knew it was dangerous, this obsession, this distraction, but he couldn't help it. He had to find her. He had to understand why she had run, and why he couldn't stop thinking about her. He had to make her his. Sophia moved through the bustling dining room of the Obsidian, one of Los Angeles's most exclusive restaurants. A tray laden with delicate appetizers balanced expertly on her shoulder. The clinking of silverware, the murmur of hushed conversations, the soft jazz music. It was all a familiar symphony of her nightly grind. Her feet ached, her smile felt plastered on, but she pushed through, fueled by the desperate need to make enough tips to cover her next tuition installment. The thought of dropping out still haunted her, a dark cloud on the horizon, but she refused to give up without a fight. Every dollar earned was a small victory against the encroaching despair. She navigated the tables with practiced grace, her mind a whirlwind of orders, table numbers, and the complex theories of cognitive psychology she'd been trying to cram in during her meager breaks. The memory of Thonny, the mysterious man from the park, had faded slightly, pushed to the back of her mind by the relentless demands of her daily life. Yet sometimes, in quiet moments, the phantom warmth of his lips, the intensity of his gaze, would resurface, a bittersweet reminder of a fleeting, impossible connection. She would quickly dismiss it, reminding herself that he was from a different world, a world she had no place in. Tonight was particularly busy. A large VIP party had just arrived, taking over the most coveted table in her section. The host, a man with an air of quiet authority, had requested their best server. Sophia, despite her exhaustion, had been chosen. She took a deep breath, adjusted her black uniform and approached the table, a professional smile fixed on her face. "Good evening," she began, her voice calm and polite. "Welcome to the Obsidian. My name is Sophia, and I'll be your server tonight. Can I start you with some drinks?" As she spoke, her eyes scanned the faces at the table, a routine gesture to gauge her clientele. Her gaze swept past several impeccably dressed men and women, then landed on the head of the table. Her breath hitched. The tray in her hand wobbled precariously, threatening to spill its contents. Her heart, which moments before had been beating a steady, tired rhythm, now hammered against her ribs with frantic intensity. It was him, Thonny. He sat there, an undeniable presence, radiating power and confidence. He was even more striking than she remembered, his tailored suit impeccable, his dark hair perfectly styled. His eyes, those intense dark eyes, were fixed on her, a slow, knowing smile beginning to form on his lips. Sophia felt a wave of heat rush through her, a mix of shock, embarrassment, and an undeniable thrill. Butterflies, a whole swarm of them, erupted in her stomach, making her feel light-headed. She tried to maintain her composure, to keep the professional mask firmly in place, but her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the tray. She could feel his gaze, a tangible weight, burning into her, stripping away her carefully constructed defenses. He hadn't taken his eyes off her since she approached the table. A flicker of surprise, then recognition, then something deeper, a possessive glint, had crossed his features. He had found her. After weeks of searching, of restless nights and distracted days, destiny had brought her back to him. He remembered every detail, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of psychology, the determined set of her jaw, the unexpected softness of her lips. And now, seeing her here in this elegant uniform, serving him, only intensified his fascination. Sophia forced herself to look away, to focus on the other guests, to pretend she hadn't just had her world tilted on its axis. She cleared her throat, trying to regain her professional demeanor. "Can I get anyone started with a drink?" she repeated, her voice a little higher than she intended. "Sophia." Thonny's voice cut through the polite chatter, deep and resonant, sending another shiver down her spine. He didn't ask for a drink. He simply said her name, a statement, a claim. His smile widened, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips that sent a clear message. "I found you." Her eyes, against her better judgment, snapped back to his. The intensity of his gaze was overwhelming, a silent conversation passing between them, filled with unspoken questions and undeniable recognition. She saw the triumph in his eyes, the satisfaction of a man who always gets what he wants. And in that moment she knew he hadn't just stumbled upon her, he had been looking for her, and now he had found her. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the elegant backdrop of the Obsidian. She managed to take the drink orders from Thonny's table, her movements stiff, her voice a little too steady. Every fiber of her being was acutely aware of his presence, his eyes following her every move. She felt like a moth drawn to a dangerous, beautiful flame. When she returned with the drinks, placing them carefully on the table, Thonny leaned back in his chair, a relaxed posture that belied the intensity in his gaze. "It seems destiny has a sense of humor, Sophia," he said, his voice low, meant only for her. The other guests at his table, engrossed in their own conversations, seemed oblivious to the charged atmosphere between them. Sophia forced a small, professional smile. "It would seem so, Mr. Thonny," she replied, using his first name as a subtle acknowledgement of their previous encounter, yet maintaining a respectful distance. He chuckled, a warm, rumbling sound. "Just Thonny, please, and I believe we're past the formalities, wouldn't you agree?" His eyes held hers, a silent challenge, a question. Her cheeks flushed. She remembered the kiss, the raw emotion, the desperate flight. I'm working, Thonny," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "And you're doing an excellent job," he complimented, his gaze softening slightly. "But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night. I've been looking for you, Sophia." His confession, spoken so openly, sent a jolt through her. She had suspected it, but hearing him say it aloud, admitting his search, was both flattering and terrifying. "You have?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Every day," he confirmed, his eyes unwavering. "I couldn't get you out of my head. Your determination, your intelligence, the way you spoke about psychology, and that kiss." He paused, letting the memory hang in the air between them. "I needed to understand why you ran, why you disappeared. Sophia felt a wave of vulnerability wash over her. His honesty disarmed her. She had built walls around herself, protecting her pride, her struggles. But looking into his intense, sincere eyes, she felt an urge to be honest, to lay bare the truth of her life. "I ran because it was too much," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "You're from a different world, Thonny. My life is complicated. I'm a waitress, barely making ends meet. I'm about to drop out of college because I can't afford it anymore." The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. A confession she hadn't intended to make. A shadow crossed Thonny's face, a flicker of concern. He reached across the table, his hand briefly covering hers, a gesture of comfort and reassurance. "Sophia, your circumstances don't define you. They only highlight your strength and your story, your determination. That's what captivated me, not your bank account." He squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. "I want to help you. Let me help you stay in school." Sophia's pride flared. "No," she said, perhaps a little too sharply. "I can't accept charity, Thonny. I have to do this myself." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "It's not charity, Sophia. It's an investment. In a brilliant mind, in a woman I can't stop thinking about. Think of it as a partnership. You focus on your studies, on your dreams. Let me take care of the rest." He paused, his gaze intense. "This isn't about money for me. It's about you, about seeing that fire in your eyes continue to burn brightly." His words, so sincere, so understanding, chipped away at her defenses. He wasn't offering her a handout. He was offering her a chance, a belief in her potential that she sometimes struggled to maintain herself. The thought of continuing her studies, of not having to give up her dream, was almost overwhelming. But the implications of accepting his help, of stepping into his world, were equally daunting. I don't know what to say," she murmured, her eyes downcast. "Say yes," he urged, his voice soft but firm. "Say yes to dinner with me after your shift. A real date, Sophia. No running away this time, just us talking, getting to know each other, without the pressure of a near accident or a busy restaurant." He smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached his eyes, melting away some of his usual intensity. "What do you say?" Sophia looked at him, truly looked at him. She saw not just the powerful, enigmatic man, but the man who had listened to her, who had seen her struggles and her dreams, and who, despite their vastly different worlds, seemed to genuinely care. The butterflies in her stomach fluttered again, but this time they were not just from fear or embarrassment, but from a burgeoning hope, a thrilling possibility. She took a deep breath, a decision forming in her mind. This was dangerous. Yes, but it was also an opportunity, a chance at a future she thought was lost, and perhaps, just perhaps, a chance at something more. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and steady, a smile finally breaking through her apprehension. "Yes, Thonny, I'd like that very much." 6 months later, the Los Angeles skyline glittered outside the panoramic windows of Thonny's penthouse, a breathtaking vista that had become Sophia's new normal. She sat curled on a plush sofa, a psychology textbook open on her lap, a highlighter poised over a complex paragraph on cognitive behavioral therapy. The words no longer blurred with anxiety. Instead, they ignited a renewed passion, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Thonny had kept his promise and more. He had not just paid her tuition, he had created an environment where she could thrive, where her studies were her priority, where her dreams were nurtured. Their relationship had blossomed, a delicate yet resilient flower in the fertile ground of mutual respect and undeniable attraction. Sophia had learned that Thonny's world was indeed complex, filled with shadows and unspoken rules, but she also saw the man beneath the powerful facade. He was fiercely loyal, incredibly intelligent, and possessed a surprising tenderness that he reserved almost exclusively for her. He had shown her glimpses of his life, introduced her to his trusted inner circle, but always with an emphasis on her safety and comfort. He never pressured her, never demanded she conform to his world, instead encouraging her to forge her own path within it. She, in turn, had brought light and laughter into his often somber existence. She challenged him, debated with him, and saw past the Mafia boss to the man who carried the weight of immense responsibility, a man who, despite his power, had a deep-seated need for genuine connection. His possessiveness, initially a subtle undercurrent, had evolved into a fierce, protective love, always respectful of her independence. He guarded her, yes, but he also empowered her. One evening, as the city lights twinkled below, Thonny found her studying, a soft smile on his face. He sat beside her, gently closing her textbook. "Enough for tonight, my brilliant student," he murmured, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. Sophia leaned into his touch, her heart swelling with a love that felt both profound and utterly natural. "I was just getting to the good part," she teased, but she melted into his embrace. "The good part is right here," he said, his eyes dark and full of emotion. He kissed her then, a slow, deep kiss that spoke volumes of their journey. It wasn't the impulsive, desperate kiss from that first night, but a kiss of deep affection, of shared dreams, of a future they were building together. She had come into his life as a casual encounter, a fleeting moment of connection born from a near accident. She had been a waitress, struggling and proud, a woman he couldn't forget, and he, the formidable Mafia boss, had become her greatest love, the man who saw her, truly saw her, and helped her reclaim her dreams. Sophia knew her path was still unfolding, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but with Thonny by her side she was no longer afraid. She was loved, she was cherished, and she was finally, truly, home.